Get Liam Fox has backed Boris Johnson's NHS funding plea. Former Dr. Liam Fox said there was a case to spend more on health and that he could not imagine the NHS not being a priority for any spare cash after Britain left the European Union. But the International Trade Secretary declined to back Mr. Johnson's specific call for a £5 billion NHS boost, and he said spending decisions would be made by the government of the day in line with people's priorities. He spoke ahead of Commons clashes where Jeremy Corbyn told Theresa May she was in denial about the reality of NHS shortages, but Mr. Johnson was not. On Tuesday, the Foreign Secretary was pointedly rebuked by the Prime Minister for making it known before a cabinet meeting about health that he would demand an extra £100 million a week for the NHS. I think there is a case to spend more money on healthcare. Dr. Liam Fox at the ministers' meeting. Mrs. May then preempted Mr. Johnson by making clear that any money saved by Brexit would go to the government's priorities, including schools and housing as well as health. There was frustration among some of Mr. Johnson's ministerial and Tory colleagues, and even calls for him to be sacked, over his team's ill-disciplined pre-briefing about a behind-closed-doors meeting. Dr. Fox, who like Mr. Johnson campaigned for Brexit in the 2016 referendum, said, "I think there is a case to spend more money on healthcare, and we are spending more money on healthcare. I think it's very useful to remind people that we're getting a dividend from leaving the EU." Getty both Dr. Fox. Mr. Johnson campaigned for Brexit in the 2016 referendum, but Dr. Fox also stressed exactly how we spend the dividend that comes from leaving the EU will be determined by the priorities we face at the time. We will have control over more of the money. The government at that time will be able to determine how we spend that money on the priorities that the British people have at that point. I find it absolutely unthinkable that health would not be amongst the top of those. Labour leader Mr. Corbyn focused his Commons Question Time attack on the Prime Minister on reports about pressures on the NHS impacting on patients. Mr. Johnson was away on official business, so not in the chamber to see the clash, as Mrs. May insisted the government was investing in the NHS and had ensured it was better prepared than ever for the pressures of winter. Mr. Corbyn told her it needs money, it needs support, and it needs it now. Theresa May insisted the government was investing in the NHS. You are, frankly, in denial about the state of the NHS. Even the Foreign Secretary recognizes it, but you aren't listening. When are you going to face up to the reality and take action to save the NHS from death by 1,000 cuts? Mrs. May told him, there is only one part of the NHS that has seen a cut in its funding. It's the NHS in Wales under a Labour government. This is a government that is backing the NHS plan, that is putting more money into the NHS, that is recruiting more doctors and nurses, that is seeing new treatments come on board which ensure people are getting the best treatment they need.